probably looking at this is my other outfit, or persona, as one would say, when talking about fanfictions. And this one, while not being spooky per se, does deal with, of course, ghosts and goblins and ghouls. Or at least in this case, ghosts and spirits, and the ever-widening, very terrifying sea for which we have not really fully explored. My own existential crisis, basically anxiety-inducing conditioning aside, today's fanfiction is called Weigh Anchor. It is a ship girl worm fanfiction, and this one legitimately looks to be a lot of fun. It has to do with a young tailor who actually has inadvertently helped alter the timeline of this Earth beta, or at least this version of Earth beta, to a very large degree. Tattletale is now with the Protectorate in New York, primarily the Triumvirate, I believe. My lore when it comes to Worm is not that great, so I'm just going to look at the story the way it is and how it's presented. And when I say ship girls, I already know everyone and their mother's going to be popping out of the damn woodworks, because of course the freaking Azura Lane is so prolific that I'm not even going to get into that section of the internet.
Oh my.
And you know the section I'm talking about, I'm not even going to get into that. So, what is Weigh Anchor? I've already talked about the fact, the slight spoiler, Tattletale is now part of the PRT, or the Protectorate, working alongside Legend and all that good jazz, but this tailor is able to actually adopt the spiritual forms of ship girls. And it legitimately does work pretty good, because her father, being a former Navy man who served in our country's, naval forces, is upholding the traditions of the Navy as well as the values of the United States Navy. I knew that was going to come in one way or another. So, you're probably wondering, how does this all tie together? Well, this all ties together pretty well, because Taylor, in her various ship girl forms, is able to go out into the sea and basically help out here, there, everywhere, basically wherever she can. The boys up in Washington are very much so curious about her, and the fact of she's basically the embodiment of these different ships from World War II to Korea, or basically to the 60s, more or less. Of course, I wouldn't be putting this in October if not for the spiritual aspect. During an event in the story, a ship, sadly a cutter, does go down, or at least a spinner, give or take, from the United States Coast Guard. Her crew, sadly, some of them dying, not being able to be rescued. This does piss off the government because, well, if you remember my rant from the My Hero Academia war arc, the Phantom War arc, you know the United States doesn't like people doing three things. Touching our boats, touching our boots, and touching our people. These motherfuckers did two of the three. And those motherfuckers happen to be Skidmark and, of course, Squealer, who the FBI and the DEA have been tracking for a while now because they're working with a Russian organized crime family, and the PRT basically told them to fuck off, and they took over the investigation that took years to do, all because of the fact that it was a parahuman involved. This caused the death of a few service members in the United States Coast Guard, which is technically the offshoot of the U.S. Navy, much like the National Guard being an offshoot of the U.S. Army, as well as the State Guard being an offshoot of the National Guard, who is an offshoot of the Army. As such, the Coast Guard is an offshoot of the United States Navy, meaning that, technically speaking, U.S. Navy personnel have been killed. This pisses off people pretty bad. This causes questions to be asked, and the PRT be put onto a very, very thin fucking ice with the Big Daddy military and Big Daddy government.
Okay, Flaming Dragon, fuckface. First, take a big step back and literally fuck your own face! Now, I don't know what kind of pan-Pacific bullshit power play you're trying to pull here, but Asia Jack is my territory. So whatever you're thinking, you better think again. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to head down there, and I will rain down an ungodly fucking firestorm upon you. You're gonna have to call the fucking United Nations and get a fucking binding resolution to keep me from fucking destroying you. I am talking scorched earth, motherfucker. I will massacre you. I will fuck you up!
You're probably wondering, why is that? Well, here's the thing. There's a little rule that's called inter-service cooperation. I got that right. Second time. Or third time, give or take. Basically, it means that no matter if you're a federal law enforcement government agency, or a state law enforcement agency, or even National Guard and Big Army, you are supposed to work together. You're not supposed to stall each other. You're supposed to work together to be able to handle the situations that are coming up. Well, the PRT in this situation basically didn't work well with Big Daddy government, believing that they themselves are the government, that they themselves are the law. And let's just say that when it comes to the military and national security matters, the fact that some parahuman was able to basically make a honest-to-God combat-ready ship, a floating technical, if you will, and actively engage against military personnel, I know they're Coast Guard, but they're still military personnel, kind of raises a few red flags for Big Daddy government, for Uncle Sam. As such, Uncle Sam will have to actually launch an internal investigation into the PRT, or threaten an internal investigation into the PRT to find out exactly why the hell they were not informed of this. The fact that someone basically was able to make what is essentially an illegal armed vehicle of war, basically a battleship, or in this case, in my brain, mind you, because when I read that section, I was thinking, okay, it's more like a torpedo boat, or maybe like those light gunboats, basically, from Vietnam, where it's basically just a small craft, but it has a big gun on it, or, again, to those who actually know naval warfare and naval ships better than I, go ahead and sign off in the comments section, or even the author himself can sign off in the comments section, see how close I was to actually kind of discerning what the ship was that Skidmark and Squealer used to basically sink a fucking U.S. Coast Guard ship and basically piss off Big Daddy Navy, Coast Guard, and Big Daddy Government and Uncle Sam. Now, I did say spirit before I went off on that tangent. So, the spirit of the U.S. Coast Guard ship is now among the world, which, by the way, this actually opens up a lot of possibilities, which I will get into later on after I give my final thoughts on this fanfiction. The ship is saddened at the fact that she couldn't save some of her crew. And I like that. I legitimately do love that, and it opens up so much possibilities there when interacting with the public, or at least in this case, the Coast Guard interacting with this ship spirit of one of their ships. Her being grieving and literally heartbroken at the fact of she couldn't save all her crew. You could have, the author, who I'm hoping is watching, mind you, could take that and have it to where he could have a heartfelt scene between this ship girl spirit of the Coast Guard ship and the Coast Guard as well as the Navy, reminding her that it wasn't her fault. She did all she could, and her crew did, to basically make sure at least most of their crew made it back alive. And the crew who was alive and basically safe because of her actions before she was basically sunk could even remind her that a lot of them are still alive and breathing because of her. And it should be they who are sorry that they couldn't save her. There's a lot of stuff that could be done there, and a lot of deep spiritual stuff that could definitely go down. Like, legitimately, a lot of deep spiritual stuff. Speaking of spiritual, there's a lot of actual Shinto religion in this fic as well. And Kinta, even, is religious. A.k.a. Lung is very much so somewhat religious as well in this, and even is kind of happy with this. And a lot of other fan fictions I've seen where it's like, oh hey, yeah, no, he sees the tailed fox ship girls, doesn't really do anything, gets pissed off. For a man like that, who is actually trying to keep their culture alive, I think anyone in their sane brain would realize that the yokai have come to America in their part of the city that is trying to keep Japanese culture alive, or at least the culture from their homelands alive. So it makes a lot of sense that if there are powers, then yes, there are spirits, and yes, spirits means yokai. So, again, who's to say the Great Kami is not around either? Just saying, you know? And I do like that about his character in this fanfiction, is that he legitimately does respect the spirits and does actually respect the religion of his people, and I would not be surprised if he starts practicing it later down the line. And honestly, that would be kind of cool to do. Even coming to down the line, if more of these ship girls start showing up, and I do hope that happens, because there's a lot that can be done here. Legitimately, that can be done here. Because, again, I want to dig into that, I really do, but I don't want to make this review longer than it has to be, talking about a 9-page fanfiction. So, moving on to it, let's go ahead and kind of talk about this, because, again, there's a lot that can be done here with this fic, and I'm going to get to that point after I just straight up tell you, go read this fanfiction. If you are a fan of Azura's Lane, and you legitimately like that sort of stuff, seriously, go read it. It is legitimately fun to read. While, yes, a little short, it's still very entertaining, and I do find myself actually enjoying this fanfiction a lot. I tried not to spoil as much as I could, but I will say that a lot of the elements in here legitimately do work, and can definitely work. Especially the fact of, technically speaking, they're not parahuman. The ship girl spirits are not projections, they are not parahuman powers, they are honest-to-God spirits of the ship made manifest. It's supernatural. It's not parahuman. As such, they still fall under the branches of the United States military, meaning that, technically speaking, the U.S. Coast Guard and the United States Navy have full say of what these girls can do and how they do it. Whether or not the older ones, the World War II ones from the different nations, you know, have anything to say about it, is completely different. But the more ship spirits do show up, and yes, I say ship spirits, because again, this is where I'm going to go ahead and kind of do a little speculation and kind of give ideas for the author to use here. The author could have it to where, as time goes on, more ship spirits start coming from the depths of the ocean. Leviathan being the reason why the majority of these ship spirits are coming out, because the balance of the sea has basically just been thrown out of whack. As such, these ship spirits are coming back to basically put balance back on the sea. Make it to where they're able to allow the sea to be back to where it was before. Because of this, the ship girl spirits, especially from the different nations who are contacting the United States, being like, hey, they're concentrating on your nation, you know, why are they not coming to our nation? Or you could have it to where they do start showing up in the different nations' ports. And once the ship girl phenomenon starts actually catching on, the United Nations could finally come to a resolution, and the fact of they make a multinational naval fleet force that is under the direction of the different branches of these different ships' naval forces and naval commands, creating a combined naval command similar to NATO's naval command. And essentially, their sole purpose is to protect the shipping lanes from Leviathan or any other threat from the ocean itself. This is where Brockton Bay becomes a central hub for these ship girls. They come in, they resupply, they go back out, basically. While at the same time, more of the smaller ship girls, not the older, more mature battleships and stuff, like the cruisers and stuff, or like the other patrol boats and stuff, these girls work with the coast guards of their different nations to basically patrol the coastal waters and kind of help protect their nations and act as early warning systems against, say, Leviathan or any other threat, smuggling or otherwise. The PRT, of course, you can have basically pounding sand because, again, they're not parahumans. They're the spirits, the literal physical manifestations of these ships, who have come back to serve their nation once again and uphold the absolute traditions and honors of the U.S. Navy. That is how that can be done. As to the actual rest of the plot of Worm itself, I'm going to leave that up to the author. Legitimately, there's a lot that can be done here. I mean, hell, if the author wanted to, he could actually expand a little more and even include other crazy stuff from the anime world, like plane girls, tank girls, what have you, basically, or some other craziness in general. I'm just throwing that out there because, again, just pure insanity. But, legitimately, this story is a lot of fun, and I do recommend you guys actually check it out. Again, both versions, pinned comment down below. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, I've been AirsoftAL, and I shall see all you lovely, lovely people in the next video. And if you want to help sponsor a media review, then check out the pinned comment down below for all the ways you can help support the channel, as well as our partner links and how you can use those to kind of help support the channel via your patronage, or, your purchasing via the links down below. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, I've been AirsoftAL, and I shall see all you lovely, lovely people in the next video. Till next time. Later.